the beautiful God King. He was called the most beautiful monarch in all of European history. Louis XIV, the Sun King, wasn't just a ruler. He was a phenomenon. At 23, he stood beneath the golden chandeliers of Versailles, descending a marble staircase clad in a 33-pound robe stitched with real gold thread. His physique, muscular and perfectly proportioned. His black hair, glossy, untied, flowing like a Roman statue come to life. His eyes, piercing and blue, compared by poets to shooting stars, eyes that seemed to burn holes through the souls of his courtiers. He could dance for 6 straight hours without sweating. He hunted wild boar through the forests for entire days, and then danced until dawn. He spoke 5 languages fluently: French, Latin, Spanish, Italian, and German, and could defeat even the finest Italian fencing masters in single combat. He wrote poetry that moved diplomats to tears, memorized the names of over 3,000 nobles, knew the family histories of every man and woman in his court. He was, in every sense, the living embodiment of divine royalty, the golden prince of absolutism. Every morning, over 100 nobles competed to hand him his shirt, tie his shoes, or pour his water. Versailles itself became a stage to elevate the illusion of his godlike perfection. But what no history book dares to show you is how that very god died, grotesquely, slowly, and reeking of decay. The mask begins to crack. At first, the signs were subtle. Private. By the time he turned 25, Louis required multiple enemas per day just to pass a bowel movement. His physicians recorded that he consumed 6 to 8 heavy meals daily. Compulsive, unrelenting. His breath became so foul that he carried peppermint candies at all times. His once luminous skin turned oily, scarred by acne and concealed under thick white powder. And worst of all, he refused to bathe. Like man, nobles of his time, Louis believed water weakened the body and invited evil spirits. He would only wash his hands and face. His body was cleaned, at best, once or twice in his entire life. That choice would prove fatal. Because in the winter of 1686, deep inside his body, something began to grow, something unspeakable. The birth of a fistula. January 15th, 1686. The king summoned his physician for a slight discomfort when sitting. The diagnosis, hemorrhoids. The reality, far worse. Within a week, the discomfort turned to stabbing agony. By January 22nd, the swelling had grown to the size of a walnut. By February, blood and pus were leaking through a newly formed opening, a festering external wound near the rectum. His garments began to reek. Diplomats gagged during meetings. Yet his physician, Guy Crescent Fagan, treated the infection with medieval brutality. Thousands of enemas, boiling water irrigations, bloodletting, 500 ml drained daily. And when that failed, red-hot irons were pressed against the king's flesh. The pain was so severe, his screams echoed across Versailles. Still the wound worsened. Still the rot spread. The most horrifying surgery in royal history. In desperation, Surgeon Charles-François Félix was summoned. But surgery on the king came with risks. One wrong cut could cost his own life. So he practiced on 75 prisoners, perfecting his method of slicing open the king's most private parts with a custom silver scalpel. November 18th, 1686. At 6:00 a.m. in a sealed royal chamber, with no anesthesia and only 4 courtiers to hold him down, Louis endured 3 hours of unimaginable agony. The scalpel carved through necrotic flesh. Blood sprayed across silk linens. 2 assistants fled, vomiting. The stench was unbearable. The wound leaked blue-green pus. Chunks of rotting flesh were cut away. The king bit through 2 wooden blocks just to avoid screaming uncontrollably. But even that was not the end. The wound wouldn't heal. More surgeries followed. 3 more, each worse than the last. The final procedure lasted 6 excruciating hours. And when it ended, Louis XIV was no longer a man. He was a patient with a permanent anal fistula, forever leaking waste. Perfume and decay. To cover the smell, Versailles transformed into a scented fortress. Perfumes burned in golden censers. Flowers were replaced every 2 hours. The king's food was soaked in oils to hide the stench of his breath. Servants sprayed furniture before he sat. But nothing could hide what had happened to his body. The king swelled from 165 pounds to 310. He could no longer ride a horse, could barely walk. His throne had to be rebuilt 3 times. Portraits were repainted to hide his bulk. Then, in 1693, disaster struck again. A royal physician ordered every tooth pulled to purify the body. The procedure destroyed his jaw and tore a hole through his palate. Now, food and wine sprayed from his nose. His speech slurred. His drooling mouth reeked. Courtiers leaned in close and gagged. He had Becket, only a monstrous shadow of himself, and Versailles did everything to hide it. The rot becomes ritual. The entire palace began adapting to Louis's decay. Colored ribbons warned staff. Red meant don't approach. White meant approach with perfume. Black meant bowel emergency. Airflow was engineered to carry his odor away. His clothes were layered with aromatic herbs. Curtains concealed servants changing his soiled undergarments during state events. Visitors wore perfumed masks. Women fainted. Foreign ministers refused to enter his chambers. Yet the fiction of divine kingship remained. Louis XIV still ruled, even as his body decayed. Until August 1715, the final rot. August 11th, 4:30 a.m. Louis awoke screaming. His leg burned as if it were on fire. His physicians dismissed it as sciatica. It wasn't. It was senile gangrene, an unstoppable infection of dying flesh. By August 18th, his big toe was black. By the 25th, the smell had changed. No longer just pus and feces, now it was the unmistakable stench of rotting meat. Servants fainted. Diplomats ran. Chunks of his leg fell off during dressing changes. And still, he ruled. He signed decrees with a trembling hand, met ambassadors as the smell of death filled the palace. By August 30th, gangrene reached his shin. By September 1st, his throat. His final words, rasped through decomposing vocal cords, were, "Do not imitate me. I have loved war too much." A corpse with a crown. He died at 8:15 a.m., but even in death, his body didn't stop rotting. The autopsy, rushed within hours, revealed a tapeworm the length of a forearm, intestines twice their normal size, and every organ soaked in decay. The embalming team wore masks, soaked in perfume, but even that failed. His body swelled. Liquids gurgled inside the coffin. Courtiers reported hearing popping sounds during the lying-in state. Within 48 hours, Versailles began erasing the truth. Record burned, diaries vanished, the real story buried. Louis XIV, the divine king, the man who declared, "I am the state," died not like a god, but like a peasant, in agony, in stench, in shame. His body failed him. His vanity killed him. His kingdom conspired to hide it. And the legacy of the Sun King, once gilded in gold, is now stained with rot.